I had the joy of walking through all the brilliance of in textiles of what I spend my time doing, largely with food, but now increasingly also with textiles, because you can't separate the two. I call the piracy of indigenous knowledge biopiracy, because it is piracy of living traditions. My own work on this began when the chemical companies who had brought the pesticides and herbicides and chemical fertilizers to our agriculture and had destroyed it. In my country, Punjab was destroyed through the Green Revolution. The city of Bhopal was devastated when a pesticide plant leaked in the year 1984. And that's when I decided to look at agriculture. Otherwise, I'm trained in quantum theory, and my thesis is on non-separability and non-locality in quantum theory. But I decided to look at agriculture when these disasters took place. And 3 years later, I was invited to a meeting where the chemical companies were talking about patenting seeds. And I said, but you don't create a seed. They said, when we do a genetically engineered seed, we can pretend that we are making a novel organism. I said, but the basic material you use is still coming from indigenous cultures. And that's the day I decided to start saving seeds, but also defending indigenous knowledge, resisting biopiracy. We have to mobilize other energies, other values, other resources. And our resources are solidarity and friendship. I remember in the negotiations on the Convention on Biological Diversity, every time I would say, but this is community knowledge. The US negotiator would go red in the face and say there's nothing like a community. The pirates want to claim their theft as creation. That's what you are up against in the area of creativity in clothing and textiles. And that's what everyone who is working on conservation of biodiversity, of indigenous seeds, and real food is up against. And it's basically an issue of reclaiming the commons of our cultures, the commons of our creativity, and the commons of life. Britain didn't have any cotton, but very rapidly, soon after East India Company was created, they were making 50% of the cotton clothing of the world. Both by colonizing India, getting cotton and indigo from there, but capturing Africans as slaves, bringing them to work on the cotton plantations, and taking away the land of the indigenous people. When we think of the fact that that colonialism exterminated 90% of the indigenous people of America, we realize extermination, piracy, and the illusion of discovery go together. Well, the first movement Gandhi joined was a movement that had grown around the compulsory cultivation of indigo. So many of you who have brought your brilliant art are indigo artisans. It is a beautiful color, but it was made the color of slavery. A sack of indigo used to trade equivalent to a sack of gold. Of course, the British wanted to control it and wanted to grow more of it. They prevented peasants from growing food. Every inch of land had to grow indigo. And there's a very touching story of Gandhi. When he came to support this movement, he was forbidden by the British to enter their region. And he said, but I have to be with my brothers and sisters, and I will not obey your law. That's the first time he practiced what he had practiced in South Africa as civil disobedience, and he gave it a much richer name. He called it Satyagraha, the force of truth. So in my region, the fight was over forests, and people did a forest satyagraha. On the eastern coast, where they make salt, they started to make salt. 45,000 people were shot dead for making salt. But eventually that law could not be implemented, and we were free to make our own salt. I took inspiration from that and said, we receive our seeds and our biodiversity and our knowledge from our ancestors and nature, and we owe it to the future to hand it over in the integrity, the beauty, the diversity in which we have received it. So for me, looking at food, looking at clothing, is not just the external look that looks the same. It is the entire process behind it. One is a process of violence that has destroyed nature, that is killing people and their livelihoods, destroying cultures, destroying freedom. And another is a process of non-violence, which is regenerating the earth, regenerating cultures and cultural diversity, creating livelihoods and meaning, and creating community.